Hello, good morning and welcome. My name is Rob Lindsay and I'm Head of Programmes for The Space. And welcome to day 2 of the inaugural Digital Cultural Talks Conference from The Space. This is a conference designed to dive into the world of creative and cultural digital content on a national scale. We're going to discuss and explore ways to encourage and strengthen the cultural sector across the country, and we're going to do so by putting a spotlight on some of the unique work created in the West Midlands and of course the creative forces behind it all too. Before we jump in, we have just a little bit of housekeeping, which I will hand over to our conference producer, Jamie, to outline. Thank you, Jamie. Jamie, I think you might be muted at the moment.
As a classic error, well done me. Good morning everyone, Jamie here, producer of the Digital Culture Talks. For a visual description, I'm a brown-haired male with designer stubble in his very late 20s, but hopefully you won't be seeing me again because that means nothing has gone wrong and this all has gone seamlessly. So a little housekeeping, you will see on your screen a chat and Q&A section for you to engage with the event. The chat is event-wide, whereas the Q&A feature will post questions specifically related to the session you are in. We are joined today by Rachel and Natasha, our fantastic BSL interpreters for today. We also have closed captioning provided by the brilliant Jen, and I think the link has been posted, or we'll post it soon. And we also have audio description provided by the wonderful Alice. For audio description, you can run the Zoom link provided, and you can run this simultaneously alongside Hopin, which is our events platform for today. We are going to be taking a 10-minute break at 11:50, returning at 12, and we should finish around 1 p.m. Myself and the team will be sitting backstage managing the admin, so if you have any problems, please do drop us a message in the chat function. Thank you very much, and I will hand back over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And I should say as well, we hope that you find today useful and interesting. And please do also join us tomorrow at the same time, where we'll be, I suppose, stepping back a little bit, looking at the big picture up ahead, looking at how the kind of constantly changing market, changes in emerging technology will continue to transform what we do, how we engage with audiences, how we create content that they want to engage with as well. We'll actually be live in person at the University of Wolverhampton's fantastic Screen School, but we will of course be online via Hopin, just like today, so you can book to attend virtually, and we'd really love to see you. But back to today, as I said, our theme is the UK creative sector's digital skills ecology. So we're exploring the digital skills landscape across the UK and how we can better support organisations and obviously individuals to upskill and make the most of the opportunities that lie ahead, given that we are so dependent on the shoulders of those people. In our first session today, we're going to be joined by the Space Associate Harmeet Chagger-Khan, who will be joined in conversation by Gregory Clarke from StoryFutures and the National Film and Television School to discuss how new technologies and emerging platforms are changing the narrative for the creative and cultural industries, and how our skills should and need to evolve in order to respond to that. Harmeet leads on innovation, immersive and interactive projects for the space, looking at how digital innovation increases access and reaches new audiences. And Harmeet is also the founder of Surfing Light Beams, a media studio creating immersive experiences and playable adventures with communities at the heart of the process. Becky is head of Immersive at the National Film and Television School and StoryFutures, the UK's National Centre for Immersive Storytelling. run by the NFTS and Royal Holloway, University of London. This programme, funded by UK Research and Innovation, aims to help the UK creative industries to become the most skilled in the world in the use of immersive and real-time production technology for storytelling. Becky, was formerly head of technology, immersive at Digital Catapult, and a development producer and research technologist at BBC R&D. So we're very, very lucky to have both of them here today to share their thoughts. I'll hand straight over to you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'm Harmeet. I'm a British Indian female. I have long brown hair with a lot of blonde highlights, and I'm wearing a blue, black and white patterned jumper. I'm in my office at home, and I've got a bookshelf next to me which has a poster on it which says, "Kindness is love with his work boots on." As Rob mentioned, I'm exec producer for innovation at the Space, so I look after the Space's suite of interactive and immersive projects, and really looking at how removing barriers to arts and culture can happen through digital innovation, and increase access for audiences across the board. And I make my own work as well in immersive experiences. I'm just going to pass over to Becky to introduce herself.
Hi there, thanks Harmeet. So I'm Becky. I am head of Immersive for the NFTS and the StoryFutures. I work in essentially in skills and production for immersive and virtual production projects. I'm a white British female in my late 30s. I have straight brown hair and black glasses on. And I'm wearing a grey cardigan and a light pink top. And I'm sitting in my relatively plain home office at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. So thank you for joining us today for this session, meeting the demands of a brave new digital world. You know, we're living in an incredible time right now where technology is rapidly evolving across science, industry, business, entertainment, and the arts. And it's being absorbed by us as consumers, end users, audiences, even as employees and patients into the way we live, work, and play. The way we are creating and consuming culture has changed, and audiences want more. They don't just want passive experiences in locations, they want to engage in experiences that give them agency, offer immersion or interaction in a meaningful way, and that can be accessed differently, whether that's in a virtual reality headset or on a smartphone, whether it's projection mapped in a live space or contains immersive audio or is experienced entirely online. And it's absolutely defining not only our social identities and networks, but how we tell stories, how we create meaningful experiences, and how we interrogate the world and ask questions of our place within it. So with that in mind, Becky, I had a question, which is what technologies and emerging trends are you seeing, and how are they shaping the cultural and creative industries?
That's a good big question to start with, I think. So obviously I have been working with immersive technology for some years now, and in the context I'm in, that's using emerging technology to for immersive storytelling, where you're immersing the user in a world or a story in some way. You're involving them in that story, and in this area, it still continues to be, for me, a really exciting area. The emerging technology itself is continuing to improve. Obviously, there's been an announcement recently of a new headset, the Apple Vision Pro, which is a bit of a shot in the arm, I think, for the industry at the moment. It's not out till next year. We will see what happens, but it's another interesting development that keeps the momentum up, I think, in this sector. But perhaps more excitingly, I think the contents and the audience experience is maturing massively, and has done over the last few years. There's some really incredibly imaginative uses of this technology still being produced. We're seeing a lot more shared social immersive experiences, for example, in the form of almost immersive theatre performances, but taking place in a multi-user virtual space, that sort of thing. But also some really great successes in location-based experiences and hybrid experiences. One example of that is the gunpowder plot, which is from historic royal palaces and layered reality. And that is an experience that mixes physical installation with immersive theatre and virtual reality technology as well. So there's a lot of different takes on this, and we're starting to see some really interesting commercial successes as well, a bit like that one. Of course, immersive doesn't always mean headsets, and I want to stress that. It's immersive, particularly in an arts and culture space, has been around for a long, long time, and there's a long history of audiences really engaging with this kind of immersive storytelling long before headsets were the thing of the day. In the last year, I think one of the most really interesting thing that StoryFutures was involved in, it was a piece called Radio Ghost from ZU UK, which is an audio-driven walking game that takes place in a shopping centre and won the Lumen Prize last year. So that sort of thing, it's just really still really exciting to see the work that's coming out, and particularly of the UK. We've got some really amazing creators here. So that's on the immersive side. I work a lot also with virtual production technology. So that's essentially the use of real-time game engines, which is like world building software but in uses increasingly being used in linear film and theatre production as well. There's a lot of interest and growth in that area, and we run a skills program for that at NFTS. And of course, it would be a bigger mission not to mention AI and the very rapid growth of this emerging technology area as well. I mean, this is a huge area, and it clearly represents a lot of opportunity, but some really big challenges as well, from all the way throughout the chain, from creation to production to distribution and consumption as well. So there's a lot of exciting new developments. In terms of how they're shaping the industries, I think ultimately they're still providing great opportunities for creatives and artists to do what they do best, which is to experiment and collaborate and find and test the boundaries and break it a lot of the time as well, find where it really doesn't work. And that, and that's an exciting and a worrying time. On the one hand, I think creative people are always quite excited by the new and what it could mean for them and their audiences as well. But there's a lot of unknowns as well. Obviously, it's interesting at the moment to be looking across the pond at the writers and the actors strike that's happening in the US. That's got a lot to do with a need to better understand and safeguard against around AI rights. And so that's really interesting to see. And there will be a lot more of these debates to come, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you 100% that actually immersive is still emerging, and it's still kind of taking shape and understanding what its form is as audiences become more interested in having an appetite to experience immersive work. I also agree with you. I think there's so much excitement around any kind of new technology, and what you find is that almost the artists and the technologists who want to push those boundaries, they jump straight into going, what's the new thing that I can do right now with augmented reality in terms of geolocating a storytelling piece of work, or how can I use virtual reality in a different way? Is it by creating a shared experience, or actually is mixed reality going to deliver the promises that the HoloLens didn't manage to do, and the Google Lens never, kind of materialized in the way that, we were all hoping for. And then I think there's complete magic in immersive audio. I think its ability to transform and transport ourselves into, completely new worlds while still being, absolutely present in the space around you are still really, really strong. We don't need to see how powerful that is. You just have to remember the War of the Worlds broadcast on the radio, and then look at the work, for example, of Darkfield Radio, who also do incredible, slightly dystopian, but still incredible radio broadcasts for their binaural immersive audio work. And of course, I think again the whole field of interactive storytelling, which is choice-based, offers audiences a chance to play with, how they twist and turn through a storytelling plot, and actually what that means in terms of them getting to the end of the game. Again, pulling in kind of old ways of looking at transmedia, which was really popular in the 1980s and 1990s. And so I think that actually these new forms of technologies, which have been around for a very long time, they keep evolving because we are starting to learn the conventions of the genre. You know, just like when filmmaking first came on, you know, people would jump out of the way when they saw the steam train heading towards them. Actually, it was because it was so new. We didn't know how to tell stories. And now we do. We absolutely know how a film will tell a sequence of events and build up the tension. And I think we're still learning that in this new space. From the spaces point of view, we see a lot of organizations really wanting to try new forms of storytelling as a way to engage new audiences, really, to build on the existing audiences they have and to build new audiences. So, for example, we recently commissioned Kakilang, who are based in London, and they created Home X, which was a interactive dance, performance, gaming, and virtual reality performance around the stories of belonging and home. And it was an absolute like leviathan of a project because you could watch it in a live theatre space with dancers who were based in the UK and in Hong Kong as characters in a story, interacting with a virtual world, which was a gaming world where you could see avatars jumping around and playing, and that was live gamers at home playing the gaming piece at the same time. So there's an incredible amount of ambition and thirst for, I think, artists and creatives to kind of really push how they tell their stories, but also how they incorporate that liveness, which I think is really, really interesting. As a maker myself, as a director of my own company, what I'm really interested in is absolutely creating authentic universal stories. So combining social engagement with immersive to create positive behavior change. So we did that last year with Time Travel Tram. And as Becky mentioned, as you mentioned, actually, you know, the whole excitement and fear around AI, you know, you can't put it back in the box. But actually, there are really interesting things happening around not just the conversation around the AI frameworks and ethics, which we had also in Immersive as well. But are really important to kind of safeguard the development as AI continues to develop at a rapid pace. But we're also seeing really exciting projects come out of pioneering studios who are using it. So Blast Theory made a piece of work called Cat Royale that went live a few months ago. It's a computer vision system that is looking after a specially built environment for cats. With a robotic AI arm, and it's trying to see if the robot can look after the cats better than humans can, and what it can learn about cat behavior. So that's really charming. You might want to look that one up. And also there's How Not to Get Hit by a Self-Driving Car, which was recently showcased at Playable City. And again, that was looking at surveillance technology and big data sets using an AI algorithm, and really, really fun and playful to think about actually what's our relationship with technology, and what does that mean in terms of thinking about how we use any form of technology almost without knowing, with no level of discernment, what it means for the future of how it's absorbed into our lives. So I think there's some really interesting emerging technologies that are coming out of, you know, the bigger picture. And I think that the creative and cultural industries can use those in the same way by bringing in artists to kind of experiment and think about what kind of audiences they want to bring in and how they can R&D and test out ideas. So building on that, Becky, how do you think organizations can embrace this, and where are the easy wins? What do you think are the really, really easy wins? Because some of this sounds so big that it could almost put you off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, easy wins is a tricky question, but I'll answer the first bit first. So in terms of how organizations can embrace this, you mentioned something just then about companies looking at these things to build new audiences. And I think that's interesting because I think companies, or anyone looking to experiment in this area, need to be clear with themselves on what the success is for them. What are they looking for in doing this? to build an audience and have a great sort of acclaimed success tomorrow, or are you looking about building your audiences, substantially in the future? Because they're both valid. Companies have got different needs, but a lot of these emerging technologies, I'll be honest, it's a bit of a painful process to start with, and it's not easy to just go straight to some sort of massive success that's going to, reach some huge new audience immediately. But there's huge value in doing R&D and prototyping and doing the learning by doing, basically, and learning by breaking things, learning where your organization is strong and where it's weaker in trying to develop these new kinds of content and work with these technologies, because in doing that you are better preparing yourself for what is inevitably coming, which is more, much more of this kind of content, more of these kinds of technologies. So it's always, I think, important for organizations to think hard about what they're expecting to see out of it, and if and how they measure the success of it, if that makes sense. I think with all these technologies, there's two ways of looking at it. So you can think about, what do I want from these technologies? What could they do for me, my company, my practice, my audience? But also, what do they need from me? How can I improve them or input into their development in some way? I think AI is a really good example. To create a truly human-centered, trustworthy, transparent AI system, it needs a really cross-disciplinary approach. It needs input from engineers and sociologists and policymakers and lawmakers, but crucially users, whether those are artists or audiences themselves. And as I said, artists are really good at testing those boundaries and shining a light on things in a way you wouldn't have thought of. So they're really crucially important to the development of these technologies as well as users of them as well.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And I think also the question that I always ask myself, and also, organizations that I work with, is what value does this have and why will people care? So the moment you kind of think about, actually, we're not just playing with the technology for the technology's sake, but we're doing this because, we want to create a location-based experience in a particular area that will engage a new audience that haven't normally engaged with us, or actually we want to create a immersive piece of work that's going to be, in virtual reality, and we're going to do a community tour. I think it then opens up the conversations about your curation and your programming that then actually helps you to feed in and to think about how you're going to actually reach those new audiences, rather than it just being a really nice to have, which is an exciting piece of work using a new format that very few people will see. You still have to think about, how will people see this, and why will they give you their time to actually see the work that you've commissioned, or that you've made, or that you've programmed. And so again, you touched this, Becky. You talked about R&D. We talked about that kind of prototyping phase. What skills do we need in order to help organizations embrace this space, and what are the gaps?
Obviously, I'm working in immersive and virtual production. That's the area that I focus on the most at the moment. I think two particular things stand out to me. One is there's definitely still a growing gap in people with real-time production skills. So people who understand game engines and how to use them, but just also how to work with them within a pipeline. So you don't have to. Not everybody needs to suddenly become an Unreal Engine programmer or something like that, but understanding how it can fit in, because it's quite a bit of a mind shift for a lot of creatives. Obviously, bread and butter to the games industry, and we have a great strength in the UK because of that. But more and more different parts of the creative industries are needing to use this kind of technology, because there will, I believe in the future, there will just be an ever growing need for more 3D digital worlds that respond in real time for uses in lots of different spaces. So I think those kinds of technical skills are really important. I also think creative producers who are used to working with emerging tech is still, I think I've been saying this for years actually, but I still think it's a real need that we need to still support a lot. The new forms of content of any kind, they need different kinds of teams. You need new ways of working, different ways of financing projects and distributing projects as well. So, you know, getting producers who have particularly those who have experience of more than one kind of creative content, I think is a really great place to start. You know, if you've done some theatre and some filmmaking, or maybe you've done some interactive stuff, you know, being able to bring that into this sort of new world of digital content making, but then throwing in the layer of technology and how that impacts you is, you know, it's difficult to do. But, you know, you see a great producer can really pull these projects over the line and help you bring something make it the reality, basically, if you excuse the pun. And I think it's still a skills gap, and it's still something that we need to support a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually that it's about collaboration. You know, you can't make this stuff by yourself. So, you know, whether you're a producer who's looking for an artist, you know, but who needs a technologist or a developer, it's always about finding the team of people that can then start working on these things. And if it's about artists who want to develop those skills, I'm seeing more and more the kind of hubs around the countries running workshop sessions, you know, for organizations and creatives to join. So, for example, Pervasive Media Studio, that's based in Bristol, Birmingham Open Media in Birmingham. You know, there's lots of technologists and creative hubs up north as well. Fact is one in Liverpool, and actually they're running more skills boot camps for immersive and emerging technologies. And I think the more that organizations can be comfortable in kind of having that space for artists to find those creative technologists who have really, really, really great expertise, but then you have artists who are wanting to tell really, really compelling stories, and the collision of that to happen, then you can foster that skills in terms of having the confidence to go, we want to try this, and we're going to try this in the most simplest way forward. But it's also about going at what is the stuff that's on the shelf that we can use. So, for example, can we pick up a 360 camera that will do all of the stitching and create something that we can put on our YouTube channel as an organization? Is there an artist that we can, you know, commission to take over our social media and think about what 360 brings? Can we use, for example, Charisma AI, which is a great program for storytelling? A lot of theatre companies are using this at the moment, and it's been in development for years, that you can actually just download and learn your way through it. And I think there's lots of things like that, and it's about kind of putting the right people together, like you said, the right creative producers, the artists and technologists, to create that space where you can learn the skills, but also you can iterate and kind of work and see what's working best as you move forward. There's lots that we could talk about, and I'm conscious of the time. I guess my final question, Becky, is what are the risks and how do we move forward?
Well, I think I know we've got some questions, so I'll try and be quick with this. But I think, to me, the biggest risk really is sitting back. I think, as I said, emerging technology and new content forms, they're so exciting, but they can be painful. I know that firsthand. And it can take a while for them to feel sort of mainstream and feel accessible to everybody, whether those are users or audiences. So it can be tempting to sort of wait until it's ironed itself out. But if we don't explore it early on, and if it's not explored by a good range, a diversity of people early on, then we won't have the opportunity to influence it either, I think. So we've got to keep experimenting. We've got to keep skills building in these areas, because that's really important if this technology and these new forms of content are going to reflect what we want to see.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think, you know, to be able to take those creative risks, it means that actually you have to be brave and you have to be curious, but you have to allow yourself to create the space in your programming to go, we're going to R&D this out, we're going to try this, and we're going to actually showcase where we are so far. Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. And we're going to move into our Q&A session now.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Becky, Harmeet. That's been fantastic to hear so far. Really, really fascinating. I wondered if I could just ask a couple of questions. I've got one or two that we had sent in advance, and I think there's one that's particularly useful, particularly as we've been talking here about the importance of bringing in different voices, making sure that we've got lots and lots of people involved in these projects. And the question is simply, how do you think we can support the development of a more diverse workforce in these digital specialist roles? How we can keep those doors as open as possible?
Great question. Shall I answer that first, Becky? Yeah. Okay. I think that the artists that want to use technology, they are diverse and they are everywhere. And I think there is a responsibility for organizations to go and look for those people, you know, whether they are technologists and developers, whether they're artists who want to experiment with something new, and then actually to build that in and to kind of say we're going to curate a season of work that is specifically for artists that have disabilities, or we're going to commission artists who are looking at diversity from a point of view which normally is about lived experience. I think actually these are really, really important things that organizations can think about and then manifest by looking for those people out there. And there absolutely are. I'm thinking about all of the networks around me who those artists are doing incredible things, and they're supported by bigger organizations. So the organizations have the power, they also have the funding, and they also have the ability to bring the visibility into that diverse workforce. Becky, did you want to say anything about
that? Yeah, I mean, obviously I completely agree with everything you've just said, Harmeet. I guess I'll share our sort of practical ways that we try and do that. We've tried to do that in StoryFutures, because we've had we've tried to be transparent. We have stated minimum representation that we want to see across ethnic diversity and gender diversity. We've been doing a lot more with accessibility lately as well. But we make sure that that we have that representation across the people we take onto our programs, but it needs to be sort of baked into the whole program as well. So you need that to be reflected in your judging panels and in your the people doing the selections and the mentors, if you have them, that sort of thing as well. So it needs to be throughout. And then you need to look at what the barriers to entry might be as well, particularly in technology. On one of the courses we run around virtual production, even just having access to a computer that's going to run the software you need to run is a barrier to entry for a lot of people. So we try and make sure that we can provide that. That's sort of just part of the way we build that course, that we can provide that to that computer equipment as well. So there's some pretty practical things that you can do, as well as the sort of the big picture aims that you have as an organisation.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, both of you. And I had one second question, if it's all right, just while we've got a little bit of time, a couple of minutes left. Again, I think we've acknowledged, a few people have acknowledged that a lot of these projects using emerging technology that are undertaken by the creative sector do often rely on, exactly as you said, creative producers. They often rely on creative technologists. Often these are roles that are brought in on a freelance basis or on a project by project basis, rather than being salaried positions. And I just wondered if I could ask if you had any thoughts about how we can make sure we're supporting that freelance community specifically to access the right skills development. And that might be from your own personal experiences as freelancers, or it might be working on projects. I'm just conscious that we sometimes expect, or we sometimes ask, I should say, someone to come in as a freelancer, and they're not necessarily getting the benefit of that kind of skills development beyond them taking on more and more ambitious projects of their own as well, which might be difficult for them.
Yeah, I mean, with StoryFutures, excuse me, as a program, we've done a lot of different types of skills programs in the last 5 years. A lot of the people that we work with have been freelance. and fortunately, because of the grant we got from UKRI, all of our training has been free to access, and which is obviously a help. In some of the cases, it's that sort of free to access training. In bigger in some of our bigger programs. So, for example, we did a program called the UK Canada Immersive Exchange. We did also it was an upskilling and then production co-production program, but we're also, again, fortunately because of our funder, able to offer some stipends to help people to. I think one of the challenging things for freelancers is taking time out of their jobs to then go and upskill as a separate thing. And we're able to help there. Understood that that's not always easy to do. But yeah, I think freelancers are just they're a crucial part of all of this landscape, I think, in content making. So yeah, absolutely, really important. We've got to support them.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Go on, Harmeet. Do you have anything that you want to add before we wrap?
Oh, I was just going to say, absolutely. As a director, of a micro studio and working freelance for more than a decade before setting up as a company, the most important thing for me is my network, and that network is made up entirely of freelancers, whether they're single artists, whether they are micro studios run with a company of one, whether they are like an artist collective, and actually those networks are massively important. And I think the more that organizations in the sector can tap into those and actually nurture those, the more they are going to be able to support the freelance artistic economy. And actually that's where you see some of this really exciting hybrid stuff come out. It's really tempting as an organization to go, we'll go for X because they're a really big studio or they've had a really big partnership with a flagship organization. But actually you're going to get a more meaningful relationship if you start fostering the networks, the associate networks and your freelance community around you in your city, because that's going to build your reputation as a city. It's going to create that cultural economy, and you're going to build the wealth around you. And I think that's really important for organizations as well. Tap into the artists who are doing the work, who are pushing their elbows out and trying to create the space and the visibility to make work, which is just as relevant as some of those really, really big studios that have, that can do that easily. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Harmeet. Thank you so much, Becky. That was brilliant, and a really positive response in the comments as well. So thank you so much. I'll let you get away. Brilliant. And to anyone who was asking questions in the comments that we didn't manage to get onto, hopefully your question might be answered by some of the subsequent speakers. But if you do have any questions that you don't feel are answered by today, you can email us at events@thespace.org. That's events@thespace.org. And we'll hopefully be able to help you out there. One of my colleagues might be able to put that email address into the chat as well. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not say, please do also visit the Space website, where there are a huge number of free digital resources that may hopefully answer your questions and provide some inspiration as well. Well, look, we'll move straight on to the next session. This is actually going to be a pre-recorded session, a conversation with Hayley Pepler, Sophie Jolly and Natalie Woolman in conversation about the Space's own Digital Skills Bootcamp. So hopefully that will be of interest to some people in the chat. For those who don't know them, Natalie is an experienced television producer and a former arts journalist, and she leads on the development, commissioning and production of the Space's own broadcast and video work. Before working for us, she had TV credits included BBC Proms, ITV's Long Lost Family and primetime arts and history documentaries. And of course, she began her career as a reporter for the stage. Hayley, meanwhile, is a writer, director and producer, creating and leading interdisciplinary work across digital spaces, ranging from arts, television, comedy, theatre, and many, many more. She was at the RSC for 8 years, delivering live cinema captures before leading the content and digital broadcast functions for Coventry, UK, City of Culture. So a vast amount of experiences and obviously a lot of new opportunities that she was jumping on there. I should also say that Sophie finally is she project manages training programs for the West Midlands creative and cultural sector based in Solihull. So these boot camps have been developed specifically to address local skills shortages in the screen and theatre sectors. She's done an amazing amount of work with some fantastic partners. So I know we're going to get a lot out of this discussion. As I say, this is a pre-recorded session. There is one small technical error, but we only had one shot to film in a very small window of time, as these are such fantastically busy people. So please do forgive, there's a brief classic internet freeze, but it will pass, and please don't worry that it's a problem at your end. So without further ado, I will hand straight over to the team. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a producer at The Space. And in today's short session, we're going to hear more about the Filming Performance Bootcamp that was delivered earlier this year by Solihull College in partnership with Screen Skills, The Space, and West Midlands Combined Authority. And today we're going to be speaking to Sophie Jolly, who is Project Manager of Solihull College's bootcamps, and Hayley Pepler, a producer and course director on this bootcamp. So thanks for joining us, Hayley and Sophie. I'm going to come first to Hayley. Hayley, in your day job as a film producer, you've worked across a lot of very big performance films. Can you tell us just a bit about what the current pipeline is for the skills needed to deliver those kind of projects?
Thanks, Natalie. It's really great to be here and talk about the Filming Performance Bootcamp with you all. In my experience, which has been over the past 10 years, delivering mainly for the Royal Shakespeare Company some of their live cinema broadcasts, I can say that we have largely used the same set of crew throughout, which has been brilliant in some ways, in that we have been able to really cultivate a beautiful way of capturing theatrical performance. However, it's also meant that the skills required to do so have been kind of kept in one place, which is all very well when everybody is available, but when somebody's not available, it presents you with a problem. And so you start to have to look to slightly different sectors in order to be able to bring in some of those skills that you need. Some of the skills that we use are very, very specialist and technical, such as vision mixing or lighting for theatrical capture, and or vision engineering, for example. And in those kind of roles, we are really limited as to the number of people we can call upon. And I think this is largely because there has been a kind of gap in the skills building in this case, whereby a lot of the people we have been working with over the past 10 years were originally trained by organisations such as the BBC. When the move to become a larger freelance workforce in the creative industries happened, unfortunately, there was a little bit of a gap, and there remains a bit of a lag between the skills pipeline coming down the line and the ability to be able to train new entrants into this field.
So the boot camp, it sounds like it was really filling a gap there. And Sophie, just to give a sense of, with that, you know, what Hayley was saying about pulling in from other sectors, can you give us a sense of the kind of people who were interested in the boot camp you held earlier this year, and what their kind of professional backgrounds and experience were?
Yeah, we're just really blown away by the applicants that we had from such a varied background. Obviously, they all had an interest in digital and art. That was their passion.
Oh, I think we might have lost Sophie. We'll just give her a few seconds. And if not, I'll come to Hayley.
Hi, I'm not sure what happened there.
You were just talking about, you were blown away by the kind of range of experience that you saw in the applicants. I don't know if you want to pick up.
Yeah, so they all had an interest in digital and art. Some of them were established creators, but it was just so varied, and it was just exciting to see all these applications come in, because we had actors. So one of them played a role in Grime Boy at the Rep. We had a producer from the Belgrade. We had a puppeteer, which was just really unique and unusual. And all of these people just really wanted to elevate their careers, and they were just such a strong group. And it was just a real joy going through those applications and meeting them for the interviews, and just seeing what great interest we had in the course. It's, you know, it was just, my inbox just kept pinging, and I just kept getting these great applicants through. It was really exciting to see.
That's great. So Hayley, can you give us a sense? I think your final cohort was 15 boot campers. Can you give us a sense? I know you packed loads in, but what you covered on the 6-week course?
Yes, well, what we wanted to do was we wanted to provide all of the boot campers with a thorough grounding in lots of different areas. So what I mean by that is we helped all of the boot campers to understand the specifics of filming performance across lots of different genres, such as dance, music, theatre, and so on, because there are some quite subtle differences in the way you might approach filming performance across those different areas. We ran a 6-week boot camp, and we started by a broad set of lectures that were about production skills, basic production skills for those who weren't involved in filming previously. We rounded off that week with a specialist in social media content creation who challenged the boot campers to come up with some kind of short form marketing trailers for pieces they might have been involved in. In the second week, we broadened out to bring in some specialist practitioners who were filmmakers and also creatives in their own right. So, for example, we spoke to one of the West Midlands' most well-known screen dance directors, Seema Gonzai. We spoke to Robin Winfield-Smith, who is formerly a theatre director. Well, she still is a theatre director, but she's also branched out into filmmaking and also emerging technologies. And then we also worked with Carl Dixon from No Class Creations, who's a specialist in making music performance videos. So we were really able to share the benefit of local wisdom across lots of different art forms. By week 4, then, we challenged the boot campers to start to come together into small production teams themselves. And they were given an opportunity to use the amazing facilities at Solihull College, which is effectively a TV broadcast studio. And they were given a day for each group to film a performance that they had to find. So they had to reach into their contacts or reach into their networks and find somebody who was interested in having their performance filmed. Unfortunately, because artists actually could really use this piece of footage that we were looking at filming, we had no shortage of people who were interested in taking part in the filming day. So it was really important that we brought together a really creative and quite eclectic group of people, trained them in basic production skills, placed them within a network in the West Midlands of filmmakers and practitioners, and then gave them a challenge, but also gave them the resource and a fantastic facility to really explore what might come next. And I have to say, we were really blown away by what they achieved in the very short time that they had in those in the studio itself. But moreover, what was really interesting was the way in which we were able to bring practitioners from quite different areas of the creative industries, such as theatre producers, filmmakers, people who were puppeteers and craft specialists, bring them together, create an environment in which they felt it was safe to be able to experiment. And what emerged from it was small production teams that were able to create really fantastic pieces of film for us. And I should also say, sorry, is after the 4th week in the studio, we were very fortunate to enter into a kind of partnership with Birmingham Hippodrome, who came to us and said that they had an event that was happening right at the end of our Filming Performance Bootcamp that they needed some support to be able to have live streamed, and we had the perfect cohort to be able to do that. And so we were able to train in the final week the cohort to come together as one cohesive production team, and they took on the challenge of the live stream from Birmingham Hippodrome, which they did extremely successfully by the end of the 6 weeks.
Fantastic. Wow, it's amazing what you can pack into 6 weeks. Can you give what has happened to the cohort now? 15, they clearly went on a huge learning curve. Can you give us some details of the outcomes of the course for the individuals that took part?
Yes, we've been really pleasantly surprised by how the cohort have really developed since they've finished the Filming Performance Bootcamp. One of the things that was really lovely is as they came together at the end of the course, they decided that they wanted to continue meeting and that they wanted to continue to explore how they might be able to collaborate in the future. We don't know what shape that'll take. We don't know what resource that will take. But suffice to say, we were able to bring the cohort back together because the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry very kindly lent us some space and some time to do that and be able to share their films together. At that session, we were able to learn about some of the key outcomes for some of the boot campers, such as we had one of our cohort, Ty, who has been able to secure a full-time job as a trainee broadcast engineer. So they're now on their journey, which is fantastic. We had another success for our crafting practitioner, Debbie, who secured a role as a content creator at a local crafting space in Worcestershire. We had Bonnie, who was a filmmaker that I had worked with previously at Coventry City of Culture, who was able to get an internship with Karen Manderbach Productions. For those of you who don't know, Karen Manderbach Productions are the people who produce Peaky Blinders. So that was quite exciting. And another example is colleague on the boot camp, Jack, who had a reasonably successful production company as he came onto the Filming Performance Bootcamp, was able to start to look at how he might win bigger and bigger commissions when he came out of the Performance Bootcamp, because he had a production team that he could lean on, and he also had the confidence to know where his skills were as well. So he's another success story from the Film and Performance Bootcamp. But to be quite honest, everybody on the bootcamp has achieved something. We've got other members who are writing their first DYCP application to the Arts Council to make a piece now, and others that are going on to other extraordinary things. So insofar as them being able to lean on each other and reach into the networks that we help them to understand in the West Midlands, it's proven a really fruitful exercise for them.
It's absolutely fantastic to hear about how a relatively small intervention can have such a big impact. And on that note, Sophie, can you tell us what's next after such a success?
Yeah, we're really excited to tell you we'll be running the boot camps again end of January next year. We have applications are now open, so if you want to get in early, I'll look forward to hearing about you and your interest in the sector. And yeah, it'd just be really good to meet you, and you can find out further information at Solihull College Boot Camps.
Great, thank you so much both for just giving us an insight into the boot camps. And on that note, I will hand back to Rob. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Natalie, and to Sophie and Hayley as well. We're now going to have a short break, so please take a refreshment break and come back at 12:05 for our panel discussion, which will be on future-proofing our sector. How can we support the next generation of digital skills? See you then.